Another lawsuit has come out against Puff Daddy, and this time the victim is no holds barred, telling exactly all the nasty details that were done to her, allegedly. We're going to go over the indictment in today's video. Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. The sofa's back there. My name's Paul. I'm right here. And the little pups are over there on the bed. If you follow me, we have Bo and Luke, our new additions to the Sofa Squad. Today, before we even get started, I'm talking the biggest trigger warning I've ever given on this damn channel, okay? We are going to be going over an indictment. This is from, the law offices of Sean Perez. This is in relation to a new victim, Ashley Parham, that has come out. This is the complaint, the indictment, whatever you want to call it. It's bad, y'all. It's bad. And you'll see when we put it up here, it has a trigger warning itself. It's very graphic in nature. Now I'm going to try and, condense words and things of that nature. But if any of this like SA or this kind of, things of this nature are triggering to you, 100% this video is not for you. 100%. Okay. You don't need to be watching this. So just know that going into it. Okay. And I would say this, it's not like hold on and wait for this part. There's like 0 parts of this. This is your time to click off. Okay. So you have been warned. What we're going to do is I'll put it up on the screen. We're going to read through it. Now, just so you know, I saw a 2-minute little video by Ashley Banfield News Nation talking about this. And then I went and found the document via News Nation, Ashley Banfield. So I'm going to put the document up here. We're going to read through it. And this is basically the first time of me going through all of it. So there's that. It is 62 pages long. It is long, okay? So just bear with me on this, okay? Now let's go ahead and get the first thing up there. And like I told you, it has a trigger warning. You can see it on here. Now this is between Ashley Parham plaintiff and then versus Sean Combs, Puff Daddy, all his little names, Christina Coram, who's known as KK, Sean Pierce, John Doe's 1 through 3, and John Doe. Now, as I said before earlier, you're going to see that trigger warning right there, and you see it on the screen. So just do without what you will. Read it over, do without what you will. Now, let's get down into the thing here. So as we see in the beginning, plaintiff Ashley files her complaint against Sean Combs. And you see Diddy is the nickname, KK, Shane, John Doe's 1 through 3, Doe's 1 through 3, and Jane Doe. Together, defendants allege as follows. Okay, so let's go ahead and just jump down here to number 4. Defendant KK is an employee of defendant Diddy, often referred to by defendant Diddy as his right-hand woman. This is referring to Christina Coram, KK. Okay, so keep that in mind as we read the things that is alleged against this woman, all right? As well as Diddy and these other co-defendants, but they're literally, y'all, grimy and horrifying are 2 words that come to my mind immediately. Okay, so number 5. Defendant Diddy's predatory behavior was constant and was well known by several individuals, including defendant Diddy's employees, staffs, friends, family, and associates. In fact, defendant Diddy's sons are being sued for engaging in the same type of deviant behavior as their father, as pled in a Los Angeles Superior Court filing. Going down to number 6, defendant Diddy was able to effectuate his crimes and evade capture and prosecution for his crimes for almost 30 years due to his position of power and influence in the entertainment industry. Defendant Diddy exploited his position and his relationship with powerful individuals to force SA acts through exploitation, fear, manipulation, physical threats, emotional abuse, intimidation, and retaliation. Now let's jump down to number 8. Number 7 basically covers, basically how he was allowed to get away with this for so long, and that if he had not been able to get away with it, there would not be as many victims. Now number 8 brings up a very relevant point. Additionally, had defendant Diddy's numerous business partners and associates not ignored defendant Diddy's deviant behavior, defendant Diddy, this is going to mess me up about this, would have been unable to continue his pattern of abuse over such a long period of time. Now let's jump down to number 10. It's talking specifically about the plaintiff in this case. This is what makes this one pretty interesting. This is very much retaliation against her, right? You're going to die when you find out why. Because number 10 says, unlike most of the victims of Diddy, who were employees, S-workers, or individuals seeking out defendant to help launch their careers, plaintiff does not fall into any of those categories. Plaintiff met defendant Diddy due to happenstance and still ended up being brutally victimized in a similar manner as described by others who had preceded her filing and others who surely will follow after her filing. So now let's jump down to the section that says parties here. In number 12, plaintiff Ashley Parham is an individual who resides in and is domiciled in California. Defendant Sean Combs resides and is domiciled in California. He also has that place in Star Island. Defendant KK is an individual who, upon information and belief, resides in and is domiciled in California. Defendant Sean Pierce is an individual who resides in and is domiciled in California. Defendant John Doe's 1 through 3 are individuals who, upon information and belief, reside in and are domiciled in California. Defendant Jane Doe is an individual who, upon information and belief, resides in and domiciled in California. Now, before we go forward, I should have said this at the beginning. One thing that's very unique about this is Ashley is wanting to be very transparent about this. She is wanting to speak out, which I think is amazing. She's like, I'm not going to hide. Nope. Nope. You know what I'm saying? She's not trying to do anything, and I'm not saying against any people who are wanting to. Something like this is so very unique, and when we hear the horrifying things that happen to her, I respect anyone's decision how they want to process their own trauma in this. So just know that. But I also think very highly of Ashley for being willing, because this is an incredibly brave thing that she's doing, in my opinion, to come out here. When we learn through this what happened to her, I can't imagine, right? So my hat goes off to her. Jumping down now, it says jurisdiction, venue, timeliness in California's SA and Cover-Up Accountability Act. Now this section is just outlining this act in California and whatnot. We're going to kind of jump down because it's just citing reasons like, this took place in California and things of this nature. What I want to do is jump down. We're on page 6 now to number 24, and it says defendant's fraudulent concealment through active attempts of cover-up caused the ongoing trauma plaintiff suffers. Plaintiff had repressed her experience until recently, when defendant was accused by ex-girlfriend, former employee Cassie Ventura, and others regarding their experiences with defendant Diddy. Accessing the civil allows victim survivors an opportunity to seek accountability for their years of suffering caused by the abuse they experienced and a chance to take back the power they lost as a result of the SA. Now this part brings up a good point, because as we've seen in some of these other things, there is power and strength in numbers with situations like this. When you start seeing people come forward, Diddy is a huge entity to go up against, and obviously, as we'll learn here, his network is wide of people who are willing to work with him and exploit other people. So again, it's very interesting to see all these people finally coming forward and bringing all these allegations about their stories, their truths that have taken place at the hands of this man and his friends. Now what I want to do is jump down to what is being alleged, okay? This is probably some of the most salacious parts of this, okay? So this, again, if you're listening but you're on the fence about it, this is major trigger warning. So we're going to go down to factual allegations common to all counts. And number 26, plaintiff met defendant Shane in February 2018 after an altercation with another man at a bar, and the defendant Shane came to the plaintiff's rescue. While outside the bar with friends and other patrons, defendant Shane FaceTime video called defendant Diddy. It was showing people defendant Diddy in the video on his phone attempting to impress the people with his famous friend. Defendant Shane then showed plaintiff defendant Diddy on his video call, which plaintiff ignored, stating she was not impressed by him knowing defendant Diddy because she believed defendant Diddy had something to do with the murder of rapper Tupac Shakur. Can we just please, on that right there alone, give this woman a high five, right? The fact that she was like that part right there made her so real for me, where she was like, what? Okay, so you've got Diddy on the phone, right? These allegations, y'all, so we're getting ready to see a bunch of stuff come out and probably a bunch of questions answered about Biggie, about Tupac, about all these situations, Cassie, all these situations that have been going on, right? For her to call that out and be like, whatever. Now, unfortunately, this would not go over well with these gentlemen. Let's keep going. And I shouldn't even call them gentlemen, absolutely not with these two people, right? Number 29. Visible in the FaceTime call was defendant Diddy and some of his children, including his sons Christian and Quincy. It appeared from plaintiff's perspective, defendant Diddy was having a get-together at his home during the time of the FaceTime call with defendant Shane. Defendant Diddy heard plaintiff's statement and made a remark that plaintiff would pay for her statement regarding Tupac, and overall dismissal of defendant Diddy. On March 23, 2018, defendant Shane invited the plaintiff over to his house to assist him with his cancer medications because he stated he was weak and unable to open his medications. What an absolute POS. Seriously. Really? That's gross. Okay, luring her over there with that. 32. Upon plaintiff's arrival, defendant Shane informed plaintiff that he wanted to give her a ride in his new car. Plaintiff and defendant Shane left his residence for a brief period and then returned. Once they returned, defendant Shane left the door to his apartment partially open and stated that the door was ajar because there was an issue with the door where it couldn't completely close. Defendant Shane was renting an apartment on the lower floor of a home in Orinda, California. Defendant Shane had a separate entrance into his residence that led to the backyard of the home. The home also had a main entrance onto Loma Vista Drive. Defendant Shane rented the home from a woman who lived in the upstairs portion of the home and had 2 dogs who resided with her. Plaintiff and defendant Shane began to watch a movie, and defendant Shane offered her a glass of water, which she retrieved and brought back to the plaintiff. Approximately 10 minutes after plaintiff and defendant Shane returned from their drive, defendant Diddy entered the defendant Shane's residence. Defendant Diddy entered the home in a grand ready-to-party manner. His grandiose entrance was so loud that the dogs upstairs began barking. Defendant Diddy did not enter the home through the backyard entrance, but instead through the main entrance. Along with defendant Diddy were his bodyguard, defendant Doe 1, a woman who plaintiff later identified as defendant KK, another woman, small, skinny build, early 30s with blonde, mid-length hair, who plaintiff has still been unable to identify, Jane Doe, defendant Doe 2, who upon information and belief is a friend of the defendant Shane and Diddy, and defendant Diddy's driver, Doe 3, who remained outside and in his vehicle during the duration of the plaintiff's assault. Plaintiff believes defendant Shane invited her over to set her up to be assaulted by defendant Diddy because of the statement she made about defendant Diddy a month prior. Upon defendant Diddy's arrival, he immediately began to antagonize the plaintiff, stating that she thought she would never see him in person, pay for her statements about Tupac during the video call, and that defendant Diddy caught plaintiff. Okay, pause there. Imagine being someone like P. Diddy. You have access to whatever you want, money, all this type of stuff. Some random on the street on a FaceTime call says something in passing, and you literally go out of your way to single this person out and do that. That is frightening to me. This is the devil. I don't even know another word for it, okay? This is a level of insanity that I'm just like, what? Can you imagine if you were her in this moment, how afraid you would be just right now before anything's happened? Like, I would literally be like, what, he's here? Like, what? This is insane. So number 44, plaintiff was in shock as she never believed that she would ever see or meet defendant Diddy in real life, let alone in a small apartment rented by the defendant. Defendant Diddy then began advancing towards plaintiff, where plaintiff was sitting on the defendant Shane's bed with a knife and held it to the right side of plaintiff's face and threatened to give her a Glasgow smile in retaliation for her previous statements on that video call. Defendant KK told defendant Diddy that she did not think giving plaintiff a Glasgow smile would be advantageous to their potential clients who they could sell plaintiff for sex to. Number 47, defendant KK then made a threat to plaintiff that they could ship her off anywhere in the world and that she would never see her family or anyone she knew ever again. Now pause here. So like this whole thing where they're getting all up in it over this, it almost makes you wonder, like part of me is like, so this is a sore subject about Tupac, but again, you would have to think of all the people you'd have to go after to silence. You know what I'm saying? Like it's so bizarre that they specifically went out, like why seek her out in this manner? And have all these people wanting to do it as well. Okay, so defendant Shane then partially undressed plaintiff. Then defendant Diddy removed the remainder of plaintiff's clothing, removing the knife from her face, and then retrieved a bottle of liquid from a large fanny pack. Remember all those bottles of baby lotion? Defendant Diddy then squirted a bottle of liquid on the plaintiff, which placed her in fear that she was being squirted with a chemical substance like acid. Plaintiff soon realized the substance was an oil lubricant. Plaintiff was squirted with this liquid substance over the entirety of her naked body. Defendant KK was then told by defendant Diddy to insert what looked like a syringe from sterile packaging into the plaintiff's private female area. Defendant KK did as told, and then told Diddy that she was unable to use the IUD because it had prematurely been released from its packaging. Defendant Diddy, upset by this, took the syringe from the defendant KK and tried inserting it into the plaintiff's private female area instead. Defendant KK and Diddy began to argue as defendant KK continued to advise defendant Diddy that since the IUD had been prematurely released from its packaging, it was no way they could insert it into plaintiff's area effectively. After some time, defendant Diddy heeded the advice of defendant KK and removed the syringe from the plaintiff's area and handed it to defendant KK. Defendants KK and Jane Doe then exited defendant Shane's residence, leaving plaintiff alone with defendant Diddy Diddy, Shane, and Does 1 and 2. Defendant Diddy then picked up a television remote that was near the plaintiff and violently inserted it into plaintiff's private area. Defendant Diddy, while violently R-ing plaintiff with a television remote, told plaintiff that her life was in his hands and that if he wanted, he could take her and she would never be seen again. Plaintiff began hysterically crying from the threats by defendant Diddy, along with the pain of being violently R-ed by defendant Diddy with a television remote, as well as the lingering pain from the ordeal with an IUD syringe insertion. Defendant Diddy then instructed defendant Shane to turn plaintiff on her stomach, seemingly tired of hearing the plaintiff's blood-curdling cries. Defendant Shane then grabbed plaintiff by her abdomen and hips, turned plaintiff on her stomach. Defendant Diddy then instructed defendant Shane to put a pillow over her head because he didn't want to see her face or hear her cries, and instructed defendant Shane to R her from behind. Defendant Shane did as he was told by defendant Diddy and began to R her from behind. Defendant Diddy then violently R'd plaintiff from behind after defendant Shane. Defendant Doe 2 then joined defendants Diddy and Shane, taking a turn R-ing her from behind. Immediately after defendant Doe 2 R'd plaintiff, he exited defendant Shane's residence. Defendant Diddy then instructed defendant Doe 1 to also R the plaintiff. Instead of immediately R-ing the plaintiff, defendant Doe 1 doused plaintiff with more oil lubricant and then jumped on top of plaintiff's naked and oiled body, treating it like a slip and slide and knocking the wind out of plaintiff due to his enormous size. Poor woman. Defendant Doe 1 then caught himself from sliding over plaintiff's oiled body and off the bed. He then began R-ing plaintiff from in front. While defendant Doe 1 was R-ing the plaintiff, defendant Diddy sat in a chair near the bed and began pleasing himself while recording plaintiff's R by defendant Doe 1. I mean, y'all, this is the MO that goes down here. This is insane. These are monsters right here. Another party's phone fell on the bed near plaintiff. Plaintiff then attempted to grab the phone, but it slipped out of her hands and onto the floor due to the oil lubricant that had been doused all over her person by defendant Diddy and Doe 1. Defendant Diddy began laughing at plaintiff's attempt to grab the phone. Throughout this violent gangbang style R, defendant Diddy made constant belittling remarks to plaintiff, including that he owned her now. Plaintiff's body was becoming more and more limp over the course of the violent R until eventually she had no control over her body, nor could she move her body. When defendant Doe 1 finished R-ing plaintiff, defendant KK entered the room to examine the condition of plaintiff, who was barely able to move or control her bodily functions. Defendant KK examined plaintiff to see if she needed assistance and was about to give plaintiff an IV fluid. I mean, my God. Plaintiff cannot be certain if she did or did not receive such intravenous intervention. Defendant KK then opened a different bag, different than the one defendant Diddy removed the oil from, where plaintiff observed several medicine bottles, IV fluid bags, and other unidentifiable powder-like drugs. Defendant KK then removed a pill from one of the medicine bottles and gave it to defendant Diddy. Defendant Diddy then inserted the pill into plaintiff's mouth and down her throat to where plaintiff had no choice but to ingest the unknown pill. Makes me wonder if it was like one of those day afters or something like that. Defendants Diddy, Shane, KK, and Doe 1 then exited the residence to the backyard where they smoked marijuana and cigarettes. Plaintiff remained in an almost lifeless state in defendant Shane's bedroom until she finally regained her bodily function. Number 77. Plaintiff then began looking for her clothes and her purse, and that contained her car, keys, and cell phone. She could not discover them in the room or anywhere in the apartment. Plaintiff was only able to find a t-shirt on the floor which she put on to cover her naked body. Plaintiff also observed a black condom wrapper on the floor of the bedroom, which she assumed was used by one of the defendants, most likely defendant Diddy during the R. Plaintiff then grabbed a knife from the kitchen and headed to the backyard where the defendants were smoking, as that was the only way to exit the premises onto the street. Plaintiff concealed the knife on her left side as she exited the apartment to the backyard area. Upon coming to the exit of the home which led to the backyard, plaintiff was met by defendant Doe 1, who was standing at the door between the residence and the backyard. By the time plaintiff was able to compose herself and come to the backyard, defendant KK was no longer in the backyard but upstairs in the patio balcony with defendant Jane Doe. Defendant Doe 1 allowed plaintiff to walk to the backyard where defendant Shane and Diddy were still smoking. Defendant Doe 1 did not see the knife that plaintiff concealed on her left side as it was obstructed by the oversized t-shirt plaintiff was wearing. Number 84. Plaintiff observed defendant Diddy still partially nude from the assault while defendant Shane and Doe 1 had on their clothing. Number 85, defendant Shane then left to the upstairs portion of the patio balcony where defendants KK and Jane Doe were already situated. Number 86, plaintiff then sat down on a makeshift seat in the backyard when defendant Diddy noticed her presence and remarked that he was surprised she was able to walk because he had given her enough drugs to take out a horse. Remember, if you've been following this, he had those weird horse tranquilizers that he was giving people. So clearly, maybe the pill was that. Maybe it was a plethora of things. I don't know. Maybe they were going to go for round 2 at some point. Anyways, number 87. Plaintiff then asked defendant Diddy what he gave her, and he laughed and did not provide a response. 88. Defendant Diddy then made further comments to plaintiff in a jovial, friendly manner, asking her why she hadn't partied together before because it was so much fun, and he hadn't had any ass that tight in a while. Defendant Doe 1 then quipped at defendant Diddy that he probably hadn't had any ass that tight because he's not used to having backdoor sex with women, which defendant Diddy and Doe 1 laughed at. But I mean, this is true at this point, right? I mean, this dude was doing everything, right? Plaintiff then told defendant Diddy that she did not party with him and that she did not enjoy partying with him and that he R'd her. 91. Defendant Diddy did not like plaintiff's response to his lighthearted commentary and offered plaintiff money and instructed plaintiff to say that the violent R was consensual and that plaintiff was a S worker. Plaintiff became enraged and yelled at defendant Diddy that her R was not consensual, that she was not an S worker, and she refused to take any money from him and would tell police that he R'd her. Defendant Diddy told the plaintiff no one would ever believe that she had been R'd by him, and if she did tell anyone such, that they would harm her family. Defendant Doe 1 then showed plaintiff his phone, which looked as if it was the outside of plaintiff's estranged sister's residence, as she could see her sister sitting on the couch and her sister's spouse in the balcony. It looked as if someone was outside the residence streaming this video to defendant Doe 1's phone. I mean, my God, y'all. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. Number 95. Plaintiff, while rattled by what she was seeing on defendant Doe 1's phone, was still angry about being R'd and was not complying with defendant Diddy's request to take the money being offered to say the R was consensual. Defendant Diddy then called his mother in an effort to further convince plaintiff not to report her assault. Defendant Diddy's mother yelled at plaintiff to not hurt her son. Oh my God. Plaintiff told defendant Diddy's mother that her son had violently R'd her. Defendant Diddy's mother, seemingly unfazed by the statement, then continued her demands with plaintiff to take the money being offered and not report the R to law enforcement. Yo, are they going to get Diddy's mom in all this too? This is insane. I cannot believe what I'm reading. 97. Defendant Diddy then made further threats that he had gotten off from bigger crimes than this and referred to Tupac, again further antagonizing the plaintiff. Yo, I'm telling you, we're going to get all these answers. We're going to get all these answers, I'm telling you. Number 98. Defendant Doe 1 then turned to defendant Diddy and pulled his gun on him, asking him to repeat what he said in reference to Tupac. As the two of them were exchanging words, plaintiff went behind defendant Doe 1, where he seemingly began to protect plaintiff. What? Okay, number 100. Defendant Doe 1 then advanced to defendant Diddy, questioning him over the comments he made about Tupac. 101. During this commotion, a neighbor directly across the street came outside, peered into the backyard, and asked what all the commotion was about. Defendant Doe 1 then pointed the gun at the neighbor and instructed him to mind his business and return to his residence. Defendant Doe 1 then turned the gun back on defendant Diddy. Plaintiff, not far behind defendant Doe 1, then tried to grab defendant Doe 1's hand that had the gun. The gun went off and hit a hill behind defendant Shane's residence. Defendant Diddy then ran up the back stone stairs near the hill in the backyard toward where defendants KK Shane and Jane Doe were. Plaintiff charged towards defendant Diddy, moving the concealed knife from her left hand to her right hand and in pursuit of defendant Diddy. Now this is reading like a movie, okay? I'm glued to this. 104. Plaintiff then pushed defendant Diddy from behind while on the stone stairs outside, causing him to fall with his back to plaintiff. Plaintiff then raised the knife in a rage from the events that just transpired, with the intent of driving the knife into Diddy's back when he turned around and began pleading for his life. Plaintiff, shocked now to see defendant Diddy acting as a victim, had a moment of clarity and then turned and ran down the outdoor staircase back out to the backyard to escape. Defendant Diddy then chased plaintiff down the stairs and attempted to push her, but she was already at the bottom of the stairs and gained her footing and wielded the knife at defendant Diddy, grazing his abdomen. Hearing the commotion, defendants KK and Jane Doe emerged, and defendant KK UK then began administering first aid to defendant Diddy for the injuries caused by the plaintiff. Plaintiff tried to make quick dash for the exit, but it was thwarted by defendant Doe 1 after a period of time. Defendant was able to abscond from Doe 1 due to the first aid commotion with defendant Diddy and was able to run down the street. Once plaintiff made it to the street, she began yelling loudly for someone to call the police. 111. Defendant Doe 1, who had now caught up with the plaintiff, advised plaintiff that he was an undercover cop. To this day, plaintiff is unsure of the truth or falsity of that statement. Can you imagine? Okay, 112. The same neighbor then again emerged from his residence asking what was transpiring. Just as plaintiff was attempting to answer, gunshots began being fired in plaintiff's direction. 113. Plaintiff fled to a car near where the neighbor was also taking cover and lost sight of defendant Doe 1. Number 114. Plaintiff then heard an SUV screeching and speeding leaving the residence. Plaintiff then entered the home of the neighbor who informed her that he had already called the police. Plaintiff informed the neighbor that it was Sean Combs who had R'd her and shot at them, but the neighbor was unaware who defendant Diddy was. Shortly thereafter, a sheriff from the Contra Costa Sheriff's Department arrived at the neighbor's home. Plaintiff told the sheriff she had been violently gang-R'd by defendant Diddy and others and that she did not have her clothes, phone, purse, keys, or cell phone. The sheriff told plaintiff and the neighbor that they had received several noise complaints prior to the neighbor's call and instructed the plaintiff to find a way to get home. I mean, seriously? Cannot roll my damn eyes hard enough. This is crazy, y'all. This is absolutely crazy. She's lucky she's alive. My mouth is on the ground over this. The sheriff did not offer to take the plaintiff home, nor did he call for emergency services, including an ambulance, nor any offer to take plaintiff to the hospital, nor any offer to help plaintiff recover her clothes or effects from the defendant Shane's residence. See, I was wondering this. They were right there, right? 120. The neighbor offered to let the plaintiff sleep on his couch until she could figure out a way to get her possessions and get home, but plaintiff declined and only remained at the neighbor's residence for a short period of time once the sheriff left. Plaintiff then went back to defendant Shane's residence where she found the door open and her clothes were readily accessible in his residence. See, now I would have gotten the neighbor on this right here. I would not have gone back. I would have gotten the neighbor to go with me. Defendant Shane then emerged as if nothing had transpired and offered her for plaintiff to stay at his residence while she slept it off. Plaintiff asked for her purse and her keys, but defendant Shane told her she shouldn't leave in her condition. And plaintiff, catatonic, in the state of shock and disbelief of the events that transpired, stayed at the defendant Shane's home while the defendant Shane left the home. What? Okay, this part, that's next level to me. Okay, so number 124. Later that morning, defendant Shane returned to the residence and woke plaintiff up and finally gave her a purse back, cell phone, and keys, and plaintiff left the defendant's residence. In a daze, the plaintiff returned home and tried to make sense out of what happened to her. I mean, again, who am I to say? I've never been in this situation, but that part right there, I'm just like, number one, I wouldn't have gone back over to the house. Now, it's easy for me to say from the sofa, right? I'm not in this situation, but it's like, if she had this neighbor dude, who you never know, maybe she didn't feel safe with him either, him or her, whatever it was, but I would have been like, at least go back over there with me. Now, I think the cops, I mean, obviously, in my book, they should have gone over there, but maybe they have certain things of like, look, we can't just barge in somewhere. I don't know how that works. But to then like stay back over there, I'm just like, I would have been like, where is this female's at? I mean, these people were trying to kill me. You know what I'm saying? But if she's also hyped up on some kind of drugs that has just set in, she probably wasn't thinking clearly and obviously in a state of shock. So 126. On March 26th, plaintiff contacted her primary care doctor, asked for an HIV and STD test in fear of possibly contracted a disease. 127. Plaintiff tried to continue her life as she felt she wouldn't be believed, as plaintiff already had told Contra Costa Sheriff's Department Diddy R'd her to no avail. Further, plaintiff was under the impression if she did not continue to say defendant Diddy's name in relation to her assault, she would not be believed and her family would be in danger. 128. Seemingly mere days, maybe even the day before plaintiff's vicious R, defendant Shane had miraculously began driving a new car. Plaintiff believes this was payment by defendant Diddy for setting up plaintiff to be R'd. That's crazy. A few weeks later, in April 2018, plaintiff, still in pain and reeling from horrific assault, went to the hospital as her injuries had not subsided from the assault. The hospital conducted several tests on plaintiff, including an R kit, ultrasound, and x-rays. Additionally, the plaintiff was given IV fluids to stabilize her vitals, as she was in a severe weakened state from being unable to eat and losing a substantial amount of weight since the R occurred. While at the hospital, plaintiff told members of her treatment treatment team about her horrific assault, and they contacted the Walnut Creek police. Walnut Creek police showed up to the plaintiff's hospital room and took a statement regarding her assault on March 23rd. The plaintiff had already told Contra Costa Sheriff's about her R, and then it was defendant Diddy who orchestrated it on March 23rd, 2018, which was ignored. Plaintiff declined to refer to defendant Diddy again to Walnut Creek because she believed she would be ignored by the Walnut Creek police just as she was by Contra Costa County Sheriff, and or would be further harmed by defendant Diddy if he discovered she named him to police. Plaintiff only told Walnut Creek police about the assault from defendants Shane and Doe 2. Plaintiff believes her statements made to Walnut Creek police while at hospital was captured by police body camera footage. Plaintiff further believes her statements made to Contra Costa Sheriff on March 23rd, immediately after the vicious assault, where plaintiff named defendant Diddy directly and by name, was captured by police body camera footage. Plaintiff also filed a report to the Orinda Police Department on April 17th, 2018, but again were too afraid to name Diddy as one of her assailants. During this report, plaintiff provided her clothing to the police from the night of the assault, but they only retained her underwear. To date, the underwear was never returned, and plaintiff believes no investigation ever commenced. Plaintiff sought assistance from therapists in May 2018, one of which tried to have her therapy appointments covered by a victim's compensation fund, which was rejected because plaintiff was told no law enforcement agency had opened an active investigation into any of her many reports of her violent gang R. Subsequently thereafter, plaintiff asked police for a copy of her report from the Walnut Creek Police Department. Plaintiff was provided a letter from the Walnut Creek Police Department stating that it was unable to furnish this information as it is confidential and not subject to public release, despite plaintiff not being the public and the victim complainant. In March 2024, plaintiff was re-traumatized by all of the events surrounding defendant Diddy, including the several civil complaints filed against him, as well as the raid on Diddy's California and Florida residences. Plaintiff called the sheriffs again in hopes of renewing her previous complaint and amending it to ensure Diddy's name was included. The plaintiff received no responses from the sheriff. Then in July 2024, plaintiff emailed Chief of Sheriff's Office regarding her complaint, lack of investigation, and how she was treated by initial responding officer. Plaintiff then received a call back from a detective, but then nothing further. Plaintiff then began seeking legal counsel for her claims, ultimately being referred to undersigned for representation. Undersigned counsel also attempted to get a copy of the 2018 police report from the Contra Costa Sheriffs, but was told that they would not provide the report or any information without a subpoena. Okay, y'all, that is some of the most next level insanity that I have ever heard of in my life on so many different levels. I mean, I'm speechless, okay? I am literally just like, imagine the stories that are going to be coming out. Now remember, we're going to be hearing about big names. Big names. I'm talking men, women that we see on Hollywood big screens and have for decades, okay? Some salacious stuff about these people. If this is how they roll, and I'm talking about P. Diddy, all these people, because remember, we're hearing people talking about his kids are involved, his sons are involved in this, or one of them, some of them, whatever. These people all around him, and think about that. Think about the money. This man can go buy somebody a car, and that's going to basically buy, you know, access to go set me up with this. Clearly Diddy is into power, he's into control, he's into this kind of stuff. Doesn't sound to me like it matters if it's a man or a woman to him. It's more about like the act of that power act, I guess. And in this case, like right here, like if he took some kind of personal offense, he was like, I personally want to get this woman. I want to get this woman. Now that whole part there, he's like, oh, you're an S worker. Here's this money. Think about these other people who are coming forward talking about he would give me $10,000 to shut up. And it's like, or, you know, or else. If they are sitting here orchestrating this kind of stuff where they found people's family members and this, that, and the other and and they're live streaming from here and live streaming from that. I mean, think about it. And like at this point, she hadn't heard, this wasn't in the headlines. All she knew is that she had been singled out. And again, you're going to the cops. You think that he's, you know, paying some of the cops off? I'm sure he is, right? There's some level of that going on. This man has tons of money. Now the next sections in here just talk about like this RICO Act and this kind of stuff. And we're going to jump down to 148 here. This is called the Diddy S.A. and Cover-Up Enterprise, which is insane to me that it has even this name. Like, this is crazy. Falls within the meaning of, and it lists the numbers there, and consists of a group of persons associated together for the common purpose of I, endorsing and facilitating Diddy's S harassment and assault and abuse of others, including plaintiff, double I, threatening and misleading defendant Diddy's victims to prevent the reporting, disclosure, or prosecution of his SA, and III intervening in plaintiff's efforts to report by concealing and refusing to report defendant Diddy's S offenses to the appropriate authorities, including law enforcement. Okay, now we're going to jump a little bit further down to 151. Each participant in the Diddy S abuse and cover-up enterprise had a systemic linkage to each other participant through personal relationships and employment relationships, and function as a continuing unit for the purpose of furthering the scheme and their common purposes. And then continuing on there, defendants, upon information and belief, also use the internet and other electronic facilities to carry out the scheme and conceal the ongoing S and fraudulent activities taking place within the Diddy SA and cover-up enterprise. So I mean, we see this right here. Like, if this all checks out and this is all whatever, you see the orchestration that he has going on around him. I mean, it's a little enterprise of these people. You know, he's paying these people. Again, I'll say it 100 times over, and people have started saying that movie Blink Twice. This was Diddy. This was about Diddy. And it's so wild that that movie came out and that all this is like on his heels. Literally. If you haven't seen that, go watch it. Now, in that same section, let's go down to number 160. Defendant Diddy had control. Defendant Diddy controlled who did what, when, and how within his circle of friends and employees, including defendants KK, Shane, and Doe's. If defendants failed to comply with covering up defendant Diddy's SA and assaults, they would be terminated, blackballed, or find themselves in legal trouble. Now, again, I'm not trying to say that that makes things right or what, like, oh, well, let's feel sorry for them or whatever. Absolutely not. But you see how the power works. You see what he does. Now, these people could have said, I'm not down with that. This that you're offering me over here is not worth my soul. So yeah, I don't need to be around this. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the proper thing. But instead they went along with it. And this, I mean, this whole, I can imagine showing up, this KK defendant, and with all these drugs that you're going to administer to this person. I mean, this is like so obviously just a way that they did things. It's just like that woman who's in prison now, Epstein's little right-hand woman. Same type stuff. And these are just ones that we know about. These are just famous ones that we know about. Imagine how much of this goes on. Well, number one, still in famous circles, obviously. But just say somebody's not famous. I mean, say, or not even wealthy. There's just some kind of like microcosm of someone who has some kind of power over people and they're orchestrating it in this fashion. It's frightening. Now, the section will continue on just talking about the benefits that these defendants, you know, in this case had with Diddy, the brand new car, things of this nature, how they ignored the dangers of Diddy and whatnot, and that how these reports to the police were ignored until Cassie Ventura sued defendant Diddy. Now, jumping down even further, we're going to go down to this next section. It's called Second Cause of Action, Violation of Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO. And this one just goes into further things. We'll jump to 182 here. Each defendant agreed to commit the substantive racketeering offense through agreeing to participate in racketeering acts. Then going down to 183. Same thing. Going down to 184. Each defendant knew the general status of the conspiracy. It was to enable and cover up Diddy's decades worth of SA. 185. Same thing. 186. Each defendant knew the conspiracy extended beyond their individual role. Now, the rest of this will just go over a lot of those charges, well, not a lot of them, but all the charges that are alleged and how each person is pulled into said charges. Obviously, these range from all the assaults that we've read about, racketeering, kidnapping, false imprisonment, battery, you name it, right? They covered all bases there, okay? And what we're going to do is jump down to the very end, the request for relief. Now, this is at the very bottom, page 61, beginning of 62. And it says here, after going through all of this, so request for relief. Wherefore, plaintiff respectfully request judgment against defendants awarding compensatory, consequential, exemplary, punitive, restitution, unjust enrichment, equitable, and treble damages in an amount to be determined at trial, cost of suit, attorney's fees, and such other and further relief as the court may deem just and proper. Demand for jury trial. Pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 30AB, plaintiff demands a trial by jury on all issues so triable, dated October 15th. And it's signed Sean Perez. Woo! Okay, so again, I'm speechless over this. If this is a sliver into what this maniac was doing for 30 years, This is crazy. This is crazy. Now, here's the thing. So imagine this. Okay, so these little people that he's got working for him and all that, you're going to see a lot of his workers flip, go down, whatever they got to do, right? Because here's the thing. This right here, if they want to settle or whatever, now it depends on what Ashley wants to do. She might be like, I don't want your little money. I want to go to court. Because here's what's going to happen. When these cases that make it to trial, this information is going to come out. And a lot of these people, they don't want this information out there. Think about if you're some big name celebrity. Do you want someone like Ashley taking you to court, talking about all this stuff right here in the stand? It's already right here, right? It's already bad enough, okay? So with some of these things where you're seeing these lawyers approach these like big names and stuff like that and be like, this is going to be going out. What do you want to do about it? And again, I've said in my other video about P. Diddy, these major names, unless they are absolutely insane, are just going to write checks. Because this right here, and I'm not trying to sit here and say nobody deserves their day in court, whatever, because at the end of the day, it's like, well, hey, they could send this to the court system and find out, you know what, this wasn't true. And I'm not trying to say that I feel that way, but I'm just trying to say that basically everyone deserves a day in court, right? I get that. I'm not trying to say, oh, well, just whatever, just write a check, you're guilty by, media or whatever. But that's the reality of how it goes. So if you're some mega celebrity, you don't want this stuff out. This is horrible. This is like snuff film stuff, okay? I'm a horror movie fan, and this disturbs me. Because it's real people, number one. But I mean, that's how bad this is. It's just, and again, he's been doing this for decades, right? People have been saying that. People have been saying this, and it's all coming out. So Cassie, I mean, again, these people who have lost their lives, we're going to get the answers to major headline murders that have taken place. I imagine we're going to find out what happened to Biggie. I imagine we're going to find out what happened to Tupac. I imagine we're going to hear some stuff about Cassie and countless others. Think about people who aren't famous and don't have a name. Think about people who would go unheard of. You can't tell me these people weren't willing to kill people to get what they wanted. Right? This knows no bounds. Think of the acts, as we already know from the other court cases, the youth that he did this to. Imagine being at any age and having this happen. Imagine being one of those 10-year-olds going to audition and this is what happens to you. This is disgusting. Honestly, surprised the man's still alive, even in jail, waiting charges. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. So I could keep going on about it. That is it. If you're still watching, I know this was a longer video. I appreciate you sitting here getting through it. I know this was a rough one, but we're going to be following this. This case is the case blows my mind. So we're going to be following this one along with all the other stuff that we follow. So that's it. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. I do appreciate you watching. If you don't mind, drop some sofas off down there for myself, Roscoe and Spirit, Bo and Luke, who are sleeping on the sofa. So we have a place to hang out and talk about all these cases and the craziness that we do follow here at the Sofa Squad. And until we meander our way down there to do that, I'll see y'all soon. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now, don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. Also, if you're looking for merch, be sure to check out my Teespring store. I'll put that up here. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Roscoe on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.